listening to Wolf Spirit Radio and Haggy Shack Radio with Barbara Threecrow in Beyond Reality. And you are live.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and yes, I suppose good afternoon. I'm having a rainstorm, heavy rainstorm here, and I'm hoping that all's going to be well. Before I get back to the alien mind and their thoughts and behaviors, and also the Verdants and the Greys and what's going on in that realm, I'm going to read something I just came across earlier, extraterrestrial genes in the human DNA. Now, I know that there's many of us that are aware of that, but this information I found very intriguing. It's research findings of DNA Nobel Prize winner Dr. Francis Crick. It's a collaborative research from a gathering of exoscientists that postulate that there are genes from over 20 extraterrestrial civilizations in human DNA. 20. These exoscientists have continued the work of Nobel Prize winner Dr. Francis Crick and other scholars in this area. Current findings are consistent with reports of Professor Sam Chang, who discreetly released information on his own apparent findings in association with the Human Genome Project. Scientists are beginning to complain more and more about political attempts to compromise the integrity of their important work for humanity. The discrete releasings of findings is one apparent way in which scientists try to cope with scientific peer pressures to conform to prevailing political pressures. Details of findings have been published in part by Dr. Michael Salla, who is a learned scholar on extraterrestrial research. Exoscientists and other researchers base their findings in part on carefully collecting data which includes well corroborated documented observations by contactees and whistleblowers, as well as other documentation. Now, these verified, reliable sources have come into contact with representatives of non-Earth human civilizations living in human populations at large and also in official capacities. Exoscience is the study of extraterrestrial phenomenon. Exoscience is further associated with exopolitics, which embraces the need for humanity to have open contacts with extraterrestrials on a representative democratic basis that respects Earth's sovereignty. In today's global economy, an official science which denies the analytical study of spiritual phenomenon as a legitimate context for understanding human reality has been created over time. The science, which is legitimized by institutions that are closely linked to this global economy, tends to seek to analyze only certain aspects of materiality. Prioritized subjects by this official science are limited to areas which complement the agenda of constituencies of individuals who seek to manipulate the recognized body of human knowledge for power and control. That scientific prioritization context has notably sought to exclude extraterrestrial relationships to humanity in order to keep humanity ignorant of its apparent potential that's locked heritage within its own DNA. And this is very, very important for us. Locked heritage within its own DNA. Indeed, efforts to seek a scientific context for the appreciation of spiritual phenomena has also been frowned upon by the elites of institutionalized religions, which, like official science, seek to control humanity within systems of accepted doctrine and dogma. Collaborative exoscientific research efforts inspired by Dr. Michael Salla suggest that within the estimated over 20 types of extraterrestrial genes with human DNA lie psychokinetic abilities associated with the genetic memories of ancient extraterrestrial races. And I am talking about that in the alien mind. I am talking about these psychokinetic abilities and these advanced extrasensory abilities that we do have, like remote viewing, for instance. I'm actually in alien mind. I'm in that process of discussing that. So these apparent psychokinetic abilities are associated with the focusing of the creative collective consciousness of being in our universe. So in other words, there is a collective consciousness, and it is creative if we are linked with it and if we understand our association with it. These psychokinetic abilities, for example, could be viewed to manifest from time to time when human beings, in the process of trying to save another life, for example, have been recorded as executing a great physical and other acts which seem to go beyond the realm of understanding by official science. In other words, we sort of reach into this realm of power that is beyond, I guess you would say, the knowledge of official science in relation to humans' capabilities. The recorded healing abilities, for instance, which individuals in Aboriginal communities across the world have demonstrated in relation to their spirituality, which had also been recorded of Jesus, could be viewed to be associated with accessing these DNA memories. Official science, which seeks to complement the interests of various companies who seek to commercially profit from drugs and other therapies, has apparently sought to deny the awesome potentials of humanity for an elevated quality of living by accessing an apparent ET DNA memory. Does Earth represent a genetic frontier to some extraterrestrials? There have been eyewitness accounts globally, including the broadcasted video footage of professional broadcasters by millions of people of apparent extraterrestrial spacecraft. And exoscientists indicate that this is because these extraterrestrials have sought to observe or intervene on Earth as a result of human beings having the genetic footprints of their ancient forebears. And in our First Nations way, we refer to these ETs as our relatives. It is important to note that exoscientists do not claim that all extraterrestrials observed by humanity do so because of a genetic association with us, although genetics is a reported prime motivation. Earth, therefore, appears to represent a strategic genetic frontier between scientifically ascertained extraterrestrials who did seed Earth and other extraterrestrials with varying genetic agendas. Further visible indications of apparent extraterrestrial contact in human DNA. The existence of diverse ethno-racial communities of humanity on Earth perhaps provides a further visible appearance of extraterrestrial genetic communities. African tribes, for instance, including the Dogon, notably, cite evidence of having origins from races of supernatural creatures that came down from the sky. Evidence and testimony on the original seeding of Earth by spiritually inspired, ethical extraterrestrials. The knowledge of astrological facts within diverse tribal communities is associated with claims of extraterrestrial contact long before modern astronomy further corroborates exoscientific claims of evidence of extraterrestrial contact in human DNA. Aboriginal tribes in the Americas, in Africa, and elsewhere embraced the animistic spirituality of the original reported spirituality and technologically advanced human and other extraterrestrials who did seed this earth. These tribes were apparently inspired by original constituents of human and other extraterrestrials to be custodians of Mother Earth and to live in harmony and balance with nature. Now I say that not only custodians, it's the stewardship that all humans were given this responsibility. Then came reported genetic and cultural manipulation by competing extraterrestrial interests. Exoscientists suggest that subsequent interventions on Earth by other extraterrestrials largely sought to manipulate Earth human genetically, technologically, and also by dysfunctionally inspiring religious dogma and accompanying rituals. Apparently, these extraterrestrials performed great feats in order to be worshipped as gods. The reported next step was to provide technology to these Earth humans so that these humans could create impressive-looking, rich structures of religious worship laid with gold and other mined mineral resources of religious worship to these extraterrestrial gods. This corrupting of human spirituality would further dysfunctionally inspire crass materialism. This apparent influence is shown in structures which include the Great Pyramids, temples, and into other religious structures which include churches. Dr. Sala's and other exoscientific work further attests to this milieu. Hopi Indians in the western U.S. speak of how the star beings could travel about the skies in beams of light like the sun, but in the blackness of night. Stories like these are identical to what I've personally heard an African medicine man or shaman claim. Same exact scenario, that before the missionaries came onto the scene, it was also commonplace among all tribes and shamans that our origins were from out there. And if you might recall, I often speak about the Lakota elder, when I first met him, said that their people came from the Pleiades because something happened up there. And that something, I'm beginning to believe, was a nuclear disaster, either a war or a screw-up. And they had to come here to this Earth. They had to leave the planet up there that they were at. And this is what he said: we had to come here, and that they are hoping, and according to their prophecies, that it very well could happen here again. So these religious structures became centers in the creation of competing rituals and dogma between different ET cult groups. As these religious structures, like churches and temples, became of increasing importance as centers of communities, bigotries in turn were cultivated by the elite emissaries of the manipulative extraterrestrial gods, and were used to successfully pit one group of humanity against the other. According to collaborative exoscientific research led by Dr. Sala, alleged manipulative ET groups provided Earth humans with advanced technology to further instill an agenda of control against willing Earth elites who were indoctrinated by these gods. This, I think, we're very clear upon. The creation of technology would also be used to inspire the creation of weapons of war, in which wars would be waged in the name of defending religious systems, in turn guided by extraterrestrial gods who sought to divide and rule. The manipulative extraterrestrials sought to create false gods in their own image. The purpose of these false gods was to repress the development of a collective consciousness among Earth humans based upon the founding universal conventions. Also, according to the collaborative research of exoscientists, the purpose of the creation of systems of religious dogma was designed to instill petty hatreds and antagonisms that would repress the conventions of peace, love, and wisdom, which was attributed, after all, to the creation of our universe, and which would have otherwise protected Earth humans from being exploited as a genetic and overall planetary resource. Some of these extraterrestrials, which apparently included human extraterrestrials who rebelled against the communal spirituality and free will ethic of original human extraterrestrials who had seeded our Earth, reportedly simply sought to exploit the Earth for its mineral resources. And according to the exoscientific research findings of Dr. Sala, other rebelling materialistic-oriented working groups of human and other ETs viewed Earth humans to be useful specimens to be incorporated in genetic experimentation programs. Apparently, socially conscientious extraterrestrials, according to the collaborative research findings of Dr. Sala and exoscientists, fearing the implications to manipulative extraterrestrials genetically influence Earth humans into becoming barbarians like Genghis Khan or Adolf Hitler, sought to seed star children. And so we do know that the star children are here today en masse as they say, abundantly. And we have our work cut out for us, for sure. And over different periods of time, I have known that different groups of star children have come through. And some of those times were during World War II. One of those specific times was during World War II, because now those who have star children who came through in the 1940s around World War II, because of the alarm of not only what Adolf Hitler was doing, but also because of the bomb that was dropped upon this Mother Earth. So star children came in very quickly, and many of us now are grandparents of star children today. And we've been in the process of doing our work, and we still have our work here for those of us who remain. These star children were seeded into humanity without the apparent knowledge of the Earth humans they came into contact with to help. In other words, in the apparent view of extraterrestrials, to elevate and inspire the socially creative potentials of humanity. Notwithstanding this, ethical extraterrestrials, according to representation by contactees, abide by strict galactic community directives of non-interference on Earth, including the non-execution of genetic experiments. And yes, you may have often heard me say there is the universal law, I call it. They're saying the strict galactic community directives of non-interference. There's just so much. There is a point where they must refrain from helping humanity. They can only do so much, these ETs, because it's our job. That's why we're all here. And this is such an amazing, powerful time. However, exoscientists indicate that the crop circles phenomenon is a notable example of mostly ethical Andromedans seeking to inspire humanity in the form of crop circle messages. To me, if you think about crop circles, long ago I had this book about phenomena in the early 19th to mid-19th century in Europe, and they talked about farmers who had their crops messed with, and the messing happened to be just mashed down in a giant circle. At that time, of course, no one really knew about the crop circles phenomenon, but they just noted their annoyance and frustration about what they thought were their neighbors' cows in the middle of the night trashing their fields. And one of the stories goes that this farmer was so frustrated that he decided to hide out during the night to see what was really going on and whose cow was it, whose neighbor was to blame. And he saw at one point this little being, this kind of a, yes, I guess, well, we'd call it an E.T., but one of the little ones, came down and was dancing around in the fields and smashing down all the wheat in a circle. So the first crop circles were circles, just simple, nothing elaborate, nothing like we see today. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, the level of intricacy that the crop circles have grown into, have become, is pretty extraordinary. If you look at the crop circles, and also then the discovery maybe several years ago, I'm not quite sure, of the fact that the crop circle investigators realized that these crop circles are exact according to Fibonacci sacred numbers and the number pi and so on, the golden rule, that's how these crop circles have developed to be so unique. But you have to really raise your consciousness if you are involved in crop circles. You don't have to, but I feel that in order to understand what the messages are, and I feel also that when we were simple folk, as I call us simple folk, when we were uneducated, we were close to the earth, we were farmers, animal husbandry and all that stuff. No, nobody went to school. So yeah, a simple circle with your wheat crop all smashed down was about all they could, I guess you'd say, do to get our attention, or a farmer's attention, to start thinking. And then you see this little critter, this little person, two-legged little being come along, and what do you do with that in those days? Now the crop circles are so advanced with the sacred geometry. I feel that it's sort of pulling us along, Now we have a little more intelligence, I'd like to think. We're educated, I'd like to think. We're opening more to the magic of the universe, the great mystery. And it seems to me that they are planting step by step by step through all this time, these crop circles, right? To show us, to teach us, to bring us along, to use our minds, use our eyes. And also, I know that people are going into the crop circles and they're using sound, toning. They're using visual imagery, manifesting a crop circle formation through telepathy. Now that's moving into more of an advanced connectedness to the gifts that humans were given. So that's how I see the crop circle phenomenon. But they're saying here, the crop circle phenomenon is a notable example of mostly ethical Andromedans who are seeking to inspire humanity in these forms of crop circles. And there are messages there. So, and again, these types of things, to use your extrasensory gifts, it's not a thinking process. It's a sensory experience and telepathy, communication. Modern Earth, human DNA, therefore, reportedly has the genetic memories which are associated with origins of humanity in the universe as part of a diaspora of over 130 billion human beings and a subsequent millennia of uncoerced biological contact, and also the coerced biological experimentation with a mix of extraterrestrials. These are some of the understandings at which one arrives as a result of the pioneering work of some very diligent researchers. And these researchers notably includes Francis Crick, the work of Nobel laureate Dr. Francis Crick, and others, of course, on the ET contact and human DNA. Eco-scientists are critically inspired by the work of Dr. Francis Crick, and he has a book, Life Itself, Its Origins and Nature, written in 1981. Dr. Francis Crick, C-R-I-C-K. The book is Life Itself, Its Origins and Nature. He was a Nobel Prize winner and the co-founder of The Shape of the DNA Molecule. He claimed an advanced civilization transported the seeds of life to Earth in a spacecraft. Nobel laureate Dr. Francis Crick, who posits an extraterrestrial origin for life on Earth, is not alone in this viewpoint within the scientific community. This kind of surprises me. The same year that Life Itself was published in 1981, Sir Fred Hoyle authored Life from Space, in which he took essentially the same position. In fact, in an article that year in Nature, Sir Fred Hoyle wrote, "The likelihood of the formation of life from an inanimate matter is 1 to a number within 40,000 noughts after it. It is big enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution. There was no primeval soup, neither on this planet nor any other. And if the beginnings of life were not random, they must therefore have been the product of purposeful intelligence." Dr. Hoyle opted for a kind of pantheistic intelligence that created life spores in other parts of the universe, with these spores ultimately drifting to Earth to begin life as we know it. Because of the tremendous and impressive complexity of life and the obvious design behind it, other scientists who challenge official science supported by political elites are beginning to endorse this conclusion as well. Leslie Orgel, one of the well-researched heavyweights in origin of life experiments, is also on record as advocating this scientific position. Like the issue of global warming and ongoing ozone layer depletion, non-dogmatic scientists have blamed political elites for ignoring clear evidence of the non-Earth origins of human beings. Dr. Francis Crick was one of the two scientists who discovered the structure of DNA during the 1950s. Certainly an important discovery in the history of science. This came after lengthy research and a great pooling of information and expertise. Crick won the Nobel Prize for his work, and Dr. Crick applied the same rigorous disciplinary standards to his extraterrestrial origins findings. In his book, Life Itself, Dr. Crick said that creatures from another solar system brought the seeds necessary for life to lifeless planets, and thanks to their kind intervention, life began here. Nobel laureate Dr. Crick's work is consistent with the apparent findings of Professor Sam Chang of the Human Genome Project, who has been credited for seeking to release scientific findings concerning evidence of extraterrestrial contact in human DNA. Exoscientific representations on the origins of our universe. Dr. Michael Salla and other associated extraterrestrial researchers make representation that our universe was born as an expression of a collective consciousness. Dr. Michael Salla specifically documents that black holes were an entry point for beings and other entities who came together to spawn our universe. Furthermore, Dr. Salla's exoscientific documentation also indicates that these beings and other entities sought to inspire the universe into existence as an experiment based on principles of free will. That is to say, all beings and other entities are represented as having sought to be a part of the genesis of the universe without any coercion. The collective consciousness of the universe is deemed to have manifested in the thoughts, in the feelings and sensations of beings who spawned the universe. Therefore, the universe would expand as an expression of this consciousness. And I think we're in this timeline of our universe. It is expanding. Things are changing. And in order to, I guess you'd say, go along with what is naturally happening according to this plan, divine plan, consciousness, intelligence plan, I think we have to expand our own consciousness, because that's how this will occur. It would expand as an expression of this consciousness. But I think that the earth, the mother, has her own consciousness as well as all of creation. So, and where do we humans come into the mix here? So we are part of creation. So I think that's why many of us are feeling ourselves expanding, shifting, changing, opening, or even just having this longing, this sense of something pending, let's say. There's something pending, something's going on. And so when you have that question come up, somebody's speaking to you. Is it your own inner guide, your own spirit? Is it the collective consciousness? Is it the ETs who are, sort of like nurturing us and guiding us on? And so pay attention to that question, or pay attention to that information that's saying people, something is happening. Something's going on. I'm feeling something, but I'm not sure what it is, or I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm feeling something. Well, go a little deeper with that. Just sit quietly. Don't bypass this information that's coming in. It's a signal. And what does it mean for you? So, just go quietly somewhere and open your heart and open your mind to what the signal is for you personally. Who is speaking to you? The genetic cultural origins of Earth humans. Eco-scientists indicate that the Pleiadians are from a star system called the Pleiades. This star system is a small cluster of 7 stars located in the constellation of Taurus the Bull. It is 500 light years from planet Earth. Exoscientists claim that Pleiadians are a humanoid race that visits Earth often, and whom exoscientists also claim we share a common ancestry. Billy Meyer indicates that he maintains contacts with the Pleiadians, and he has provided corroborated evidence of having extraterrestrial contact to scientists. Mr. Meyer indicates that Pleiadians call themselves Plejaren. All right, the spelling is P-L-E-J-A-R-E-N, but it is pronounced Plejaren. According to their system, which bears the name Plejaren, that's what they call themselves. When I was a child, some of my ET experiences started very early, and I was told that I was from the Pleiadians. I had no clue what that was. And I've met many others, and as I said, some of the Lakota people. In the beginning, Earth was colonized by ET races, including human, insectual, botanical, and reptilian species interests. Dr. Sala's cooperative team of exoscientists indicate land continents first supporting advanced human colonies were Lemuria and the Poseidia Atlantis, which sank over 23,000 years ago, they say. Many African tribes have linked their origins also with Lemuria. Dr. Sala's accounts indicate that each universe is represented as a kind of living organism. The collective consciousness of this particular universe is represented as having been inspired by principles of peace, love, and wisdom associated with free will. And you may have often heard me speaking about free will, that we humans have been gifted that free will. It is a gift. And of course, free will allows us to choose. And because we are co-creators, whatever we choose, we create. We create our own reality. And so this is the amazing ability and the amazing power that can either be fruitful or get us into deep doo-doo. But because of the other polarity of fear, which the original beings and other entities allegedly agreed to experience, the universe has also experienced extremes of war, of hate, and of destruction. So, here we are again. Let me just reread this, because of the other polarity. There is another polarity. The other polarity, you have peace, love, wisdom. Okay. I like to say peace, love, and compassion. And I believe the wisdom is innate within us, but it's got all muddled up. So peace, love, and compassion, which is associated with free will, of course. You can choose to be a peaceful person. You can choose love. You can choose to be compassionate. Or, of course, you can, the other side of this, the polarity of fear. Fear. See, I put doubt in here. Doubt is a disease. Doubt leads to fear. If you don't have trust and faith, let's say, you will be very fearful. So you'll be filled with doubt, which creates fear. So the original beings and other entities allegedly agreed to experience this. This is what we have to remember. What did you agree to experience here? The universe has also experienced extremes of war, hate, and destruction. And this we are all part of. But we also have a power, collective consciousness of love and compassion and peace as manifestors and co-creators. Energetically is power. The critical exoscientific study of the universe thus requires a holistic sensitivity to context of analysis associated with consciousness, which has been divested from official science. Therefore, prevailing scientific paradigms on Earth retard the body of human knowledge from a full appreciation of the complexity of the human experience in the broader context of the whole of the universe. If spirituality is indeed a real phenomenon in our universe, then a critical context for science must endeavor to at least appreciate it into a potential integral part of human knowledge and understanding. Exoscientific research testifies to Earth humans having originated in the Lyra system of the universe. Lyrans apparently grew into Sirian, Arcturian, Antarian, Pleiadian, Andromedan, Cygnus Alpha, Alpha Centauri, Sagittarius A and B, and Cassiopeia. Okay, you want me to repeat that? Okay. Earth humans originated in the Lyra system of the universe. Lyrans then apparently grew into Sirian, Arcturian, Antarian, Pleiadian, Andromedan, Cygnus Alpha, and Alpha Centauri, Sagittarius A and B, and Cassiopeia. One of the first contactees to describe Lyra was Billy Meier, who received much public attention as a result of his alleged visits from Pleiadians from 1975 to 1986. Mr. Meier supported his representation with material evidence that continues to confound those skeptical of Mr. Meier's claims. You know, there's always going to be those who are skeptical. And they waste a lot of time. To me, it's a diversion. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't question, but there are just some things that are so obvious. And if you go inside and ask for the truth, you will receive the truth. Comprehensive investigations by a number of individuals and even organizations did find that Meyer's evidence was not fabricated and therefore constituted significant support for his testimony of extraterrestrial contact. And Dr. Sala and other researchers documented this. And due to the amount of physical evidence he had provided over the years, Meyer has gained great credibility, and the consistency and coherence of his testimonies suggest that he is indeed an important spokesperson for an extraterrestrial race. Dr. Sala and other associated researchers also document that in 1998 interview, Clifford Stone, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, he served in the U.S. Army for 22 years, in association with other interviews, confirms the existence of extraterrestrials who are human and can easily integrate with human society and are visibly indistinguishable from the rest of humanity. If you're looking, I want to just repeat that, they are visibly indistinguishable from the rest of humanity, but if you are looking, you can see, you will be able to distinguish the differences. That's what I'm talking about in the book, The Alien Mind, that I've been reading. How to do that. These officials also indicated that these races are described to be from star systems such as Lyra, Pleiades, Sirius, Procyon, now Tau Ceti, Ulmo, Andromeda, and Arcturus, and who have provided some of the genetic material for the seeding of humanity on Earth. Exoscientists claim that the Pleiadians are our far distant first cousins and ancestral forebearers of some of our races. The Pleiadians are also descendants of the Lyrans, who came from Lyra in spacecraft. The Lyrans would send down scout teams consisting of scientists and engineers and agricultural specialists to explore the surface of possible habitable planets and to explore them and return data and information to the mothership. One of these planets apparently included Earth. Each planet was explored and based upon its unique nature, colonies were then sent down to settle. It is in this way that the Pleiadians are so interested in our world and in humanity on Earth. Exoscientists claim that Pleiadians have been visiting Earth for at least 79,743 years. Exoscientists also further claim that they are very similar in many ways to human beings on Earth. However, they are emotionally and spiritually so much more evolved than Earth humans are at this time. But Dr. Salas and other associated exoscience researchers indicate that they too have gone through their growing pains as Earth humans are now going through theirs. Dr. Sala and other learned exoscientists in association with contactees further claim the Pleiadians have made attempts to share with us humans the benefits of their experience, so we ourselves don't have to experience the same kinds of setbacks and possible destructions. But at present, not enough people on Earth are listening. As the human race fragmented in the universe, genetic clusters of humanity moved, traveled, and settled many different planets in many systems as space travel evolved. Humans became aware of other planetary civilizations in their systems. Different cultures met and they grew. Belief systems clashed, or they spread. New thoughts of philosophy or technologies came into being. Humanity was evolving. A very strong social community developed between all in the Lyra system. Exoscientists also further testify that the Lyrans were a very peaceful race on the whole, and Dr. Sala and associated exoscientists further document the Lyrans learned to adapt to virtually all of the planetary environments that they settled. They learned to live in complete harmony with their respective planets. They developed agricultural communities that were literally awesome. They were not only efficient and could feed billions of beings, but it was actually enhancing the planet itself and creating an even wealthier environment. All aspects of life seemed to benefit from the Lyrans' commitment to be at one with their home planet. That's what we all need to do. Be one with our home planet, this Mother Earth. This is a gift, this sacred planet, this home, this great mothership. At the same time, the life expectancy living in planets without the kind of pollution and social oppression on Earth that is happening now, by exoscientists, this is apparent, they say, as being much higher than on Earth. In other words, the life expectancy. And there are places, remote places actually, where the life expectancy is so much longer. And in ancient times, in many cultures, because there was no air pollution, food pollution, water pollution, there was life expectancy was much longer. So, these particular communities of human extraterrestrials represented themselves to exoscientists as having economic systems that were not in service of self. This is a repeat, a constant repeat. The allies of humanity, all of these ETs that are, let's say, evolved and spiritually involved, speak about this, that they were not in service of self, and having a community ethic, beat as one heart and shared and moved in the same direction as a whole, and would try to make sure that none of their race would lag or fall too far behind the whole. In other words, everything that they did was for the greater good of the whole. In other words, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. They were an incredible role model for all of humanity that followed to this present moment. Earth scientists who have sought to collaborate with the prevailing capitalist system of selfishness and greed, inherited by manipulative extraterrestrials, would not seek to make humanity aware of such a cultural genetic lineage. In the view of these scientists who have been co-opted from the dogma of political economic power, such awareness would inspire Earth humans into alternatives to capitalism, which would better facilitate their pursuit of an elevated quality of living for all. And this again is a key piece, what is the alternative to capitalism? Because capitalism is really running us down this, over the cliff. So what would be better? What would better facilitate our pursuit of an elevated quality of living for all, not just for ourselves individually, but for all? Such establishment scientists are not genuine searchers for critical information, but instead seek to spread a disinformation agenda, and they have also been deployed to execute an apparently useful tactic by manipulative extraterrestrial gods. The Pleiadian is an open star cluster consisting of 254 stars, and many times that planetary bodies. Many of the stars are very young, and this is located in the constellation of Taurus, eco-scientists say. 3 of the star systems have human life as we know it. The most advanced is the system of Taygeta, Taygeta, and the other is the system of Taro, which circles Altair and in other ways. Okay, well I'm going to start, I'll just back up a little bit here because about the Pleiades. The Pleiades is an open star cluster consisting of 254 stars and many times that planetary bodies. And many of the stars are very young, and this is located in the constellation of Taurus. 3 of the star systems have human life as we know it. The most advanced is the system of Taygeta, and the other is the system of Taro, which circles Alcyone. Most of the Pleiadians look like us in both size and stature, build, color of hair, and in many other ways. Eco-scientists indicate that Pleiades' lifespans specifically also apparently far exceed human beings on Earth. The Pleiades technology has made it possible to travel anywhere in our universe at speeds faster than the speed of light. They are capable of using the Earth's oceans for undersea operations, and Dr. Sala documents in association with other extraterrestrial researchers. Apparently, Pleiadians are very concerned about our misuse of our sciences today on Earth, and are correspondingly concerned that we have completely lost our spiritual center or harmony with our sciences. They have no use for money, no use for politics or religious rituals and doctrines, which are used by manipulative elites on Earth, and many of us are very well aware of that. The Pleiadians, as our most benevolent races who have visited Earth, they are worried that we will destroy our planet and ourselves. All of Earth's languages are derived from an ancient pre-Sumerian language which eco-scientists report was spoken in Lyra and in the Pleiades. The Pleiadians, as well as other groups, have left descendants on this Earth in the past. They have said they are willing to help us, but not to the point of changing our own evolution and then therefore becoming responsible for us as a race. They say we create our own future as we go, and that we need to correct our own mistakes ourselves or suffer because of them. And yes, that is something I agree with. Humanity and the origins of the universe associated with creative collective consciousness. The original Lyran extraterrestrials who apparently seeded Earth were inspired by a consciousness associated with a spirituality. This spirituality grounded their sciences into humanistic dimensions of service to the greater good, in contrast with elite-driven greed here on Earth. Lyrans apparently referred to the collective consciousness of love, of peace, of wisdom, which inspired the universe as the Ishness, or God. The worship of the Ishness is silent and solitary, free from all self-seeking. There are no priests. There are no saviors authorized to come between a human being as a soul and our collective consciousness in this universe. In the Lyran documented existential context, each experience is personal, different than another, and should not in any way be meddled with or judged. Each soul should become conscious of the divinity that is itself. The Lyrans sought to create no shrines, no temples, except nature itself, and the process of humankind caretaking nature as an infinitely spiritual exercise of being. Be a real, natural human being. In the Lyran system of social ethics and spirituality, real faith may not be formulated in creeds, as have been taught by manipulative extraterrestrials who have sought to condition humanity as servants associated with systems of repressive religious dogma. These Lyran social ethics apparently include, according the alleged representations between Andromedans and Alex Collier, the rejection of saviors and messiahs who have been used by manipulative ETs to undermine the vital sense of social and environmental responsibility among Earth humans for each other. And, it's so true, because if you keep thinking somebody's going to come and save you and to make it all better, Where's your responsibility? Where is your responsibility for the earth and for others? The apparent idea in the undermining system was to get Earth humans to throw their arms in the air, waiting to be saved or liberated by some savior as elites oppressed and pillaged. In the Lyran apparent scientific appreciation of our universe, the ishness as the expression of the collective consciousness of the universe is only interested in your intent, the path of your heart. A civilization of beings can, for example, choose a relative path of evolution associated with an affirmed quality of living for all, accompanied with spiritual renewal, or pursue a regressive de-evolutionary path of greed and oppressive power as Earth elites, which eventually results in self-destruction. And, some are on that pathway downhill quick, and others are choosing a spiritual renewal. Indeed, the work of Eric von Daniken and former NASA research consultant and scientist Richard Hoagland revealed definitive proof of apparently self-destroyed civilizations on Mars. The surface of Mars shows Great Pyramid structures similar to here on Earth. Humanity on Earth, realizing potentials for elevating quality of living from a course of ongoing self-destruction, can be potentially achieved by our coming to grips with apparent evidence of extraterrestrial contact in human DNA. Humanity on Earth apparently needs to vitally reintegrate spirituality as a component in the scientific appreciation of our universe, that in turn is vital, and it will unlock the hidden potential for an elevated quality of living for every one of us. But this is about our OUR, by meaning all of us together. It's capitals OUR. Okay? Is recognizing the evidence of extraterrestrial contact in our human DNA, who we really truly are, and reintegrate spirituality as a component of life. And of course included in scientific appreciation of our universe. Humanity on Earth also apparently needs to use the core spirituality of its own being to overcome any genetic contact with apparently competing manipulative interests who, according to Dr. Sala and other colleagues, have sought to sabotage human potential. And so really what this is saying is that the power lies within us, okay, needing to use the core spirituality which is within us. It's not gone. It's just either latent or overlooked or forgotten, or maybe people doubt it. Of our being. Who are we? Becoming, and overcoming the genetic contact with those manipulative interests. They are constantly working to manipulate us. We are not powerless. That's all I can say. Oh, and yes, I just got a little note here. It's top of the hour, so I'm going to take a short break, and I'm going to continue this after I come back, get some water. I hope you stick with me. I hope you're loving this like I am, and I'll see you on the other side.
Alrighty, we're back.
Thanks, Colleen.
You're
I like
welcome.
that music. Very
Yeah.
nice.
Thank you.
Okay. Other research on extraterrestrial genes in human DNA was done by Zachariah Stitchin. Humbling was the prevalent adjective used by the scientific team and the media to describe the principal finding that the human genome contains not the anticipated 100,000 to 140,000 genes, the stretches of DNA that direct the production of amino acids and proteins, but only some 30,000 plus, little more than double the 13,601 genes of a fruit fly, and barely 50% more than the roundworms, which is 19,098. What a come down from the pinnacle of the genomic tree of life. Moreover, there was hardly any uniqueness to the human genes. They are comparative to not the presumed 95%, but to almost 99% of the chimpanzee and 70% of the mouse. This is Zachariah Stitchin speaking. Human genes with the same function were found to be identical to genes of other vertebrates, as well as invertebrates, plants, fungi, and yeast, even yeast. The findings not only confirmed that there was one source of DNA for all life on Earth, but also enabled the scientists to trace the evolutionary process, how more complex organisms evolved genetically from simpler ones, adopting at each stage the genes of a lower life form to create a more complex higher life from culminating with Homo sapiens. Culminating with Homo sapiens. The head-scratching discovery. It was here, in tracing the vertical evolutionary record contained in the human and the other analyzed genomes, that the scientists ran into an enigma. The head-scratching discovery by the public consortium, or as science termed it, was that the human genome contains 223 genes that do not have the required predecessors on the genomic evolutionary tree. Well, how did humankind acquire such a bunch of enigmatic genes? In the evolutionary progression from bacteria to invertebrates, such as the lineage of yeast, worms, flies, or mustard weed, which have been deciphered, to vertebrates, mice, chimpanzee, and then finally modern humans, these 223 genes are completely missing in the invertebrate phase. And therefore, the scientists can explain their presence in the human genome by a rather recent, in evolutionary timescale, probable horizontal transfer from bacteria. In other words, at a relatively recent time, as evolution goes, modern humans acquired an extra 223 genes, not through gradual evolution, but vertically on the tree of life, but horizontally as a sideways insertion of genetic material from bacterial. This is an immense difference. Now, at first glance, it would seem that 223 genes is no big deal, but in fact, while every single gene makes a great difference to every individual, 223 genes make an immense difference to a species such as us. The human genome is made up of about 3 billion nucleotides, the letter A, C, G, T, which stand for the initials of the 4 nucleic acids that spell out all life on Earth. Of them, just a little more than 1% are grouped into functioning genes, and each gene consists of thousands of letters. The difference between one individual person and another amounts to about 1 letter in 1,000 in the DNA alphabet. The difference between humankind and chimpanzee is less than 1% as genes go, and 1% of 30,000 genes is 300. So, 223 genes is more than 2/3 of the difference between me, you, and a chimpanzee. I have to say, and I've said this so many times, my relatives are not chimpanzees. An analysis of the functions of these genes through the proteins that they spell out, conducted by the public consortium team and published in the journal Nature, shows that they include not only proteins involved in important physiological but also psychiatric functions. Moreover, they are responsible for important nucleological enzymes that stem only from the mitochondrial portion of the DNA, the so-called Eve DNA, that humankind inherited only through the mother line, all the way back to a single Eve. That finding alone raises doubt regarding the bacterial insertion explanation. But this is a matter of extreme significance. Unless further scientific research can establish beyond any doubt that the only possible source of the extra genes are indeed bacteria, and unless it is then also determined that the infection, horizontal transfer, went from bacteria to man, and not from man to bacteria, the only other available solution will be that offered by the Sumerian text millennia ago. Until then, the enigmatic 223 alien genes will remain as an alternative and as a corroboration by modern science of extraterrestrial civilizations and their apparent genetic participation in the human genome. How sure are the scientists that such important and complex genes, such as an immense human advantage, was obtained by us rather recently through the courtesy of infecting bacteria? It is a jump that does not follow current evolutionary theories, said Stephen Scherer, director of mapping of the Human Genome Sequencing Center in Baylor College of Medicine. We did not identify a strongly preferred bacterial source for the putative horizontally transferred genes, states the report in Nature. The public consortium team conducting a detailed search found that some 113 genes out of the 223 are widespread among bacteria, though they are entirely absent even in invertebrates. An analysis of the proteins which the enigmatic genes express showed that out of 35 identified, only 10 had counterparts in vertebrates, ranging from cows to rodents to fish, and 25 of these 35 were unique to humans. It is not clear whether the transfer was from bacteria to human or from human to bacteria. But if man gave those genes to bacteria, where did man acquire the genes to begin with? Zacharias Stitchin concludes that human genome was manipulated by you-know-who, extraterrestrials. Now here's an example of report. This is on an ethical extraterrestrial sighting in Africa. And I did talk about this when I read the book, the information about John Mack, because John Mack actually got on a plane and flew to Africa when he heard about this report. This is about school children in Africa. Okay, on 14th of September in 1994, a UFO streaked across the sky over southern Africa. 2 days later, something landed in a schoolyard in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, with 3 or 4 things beside it, according to investigator Cynthia Hind. The primary witnesses were 62 school children who had little or no exposure to TV or popular press accounts of UFOs. Cynthia Hind interviewed them the day after the encounter and made them draw pictures of what they had seen. Above is one actual photograph of what the children drew and some of their statements. And, of course, there are other photos in here. The door opened. This is a child speaking. The door opened and a little man got out that had on a black suit. He was very slim and the suit was black. It was silver and the ring around it was red and lights along the edge, meaning the ship. Okay. The ship was silver and the rings around it was red and lights along the edge. And one other little child says, I saw one over here. They had eyes like that, and they were black eyes, like they were kind of like looking at us. They were kind of astonished. Many of the children received the same telepathic message from these beings, and the message was, to take care of the planet or civilization will be doomed. I think, this is another child speaking, I think they want people to understand that we're actually making harm on this world, and we have the responsibility to restore balance between our technological and spiritual growth. As I see things as a civilization, we are more advanced technology than spiritually, and to bring the balance back, we need to operate from our love centers where truth and forgiveness reign. And that little person's name was Safur. The Zimbabwe UFO report screened on South African TV channel, one program agenda. Tonight, this is the account. Tonight at 8:30 SA time, we were treated to the rare spectacle of half a dozen children aged 8 to 12 attesting on TV to the fact that a group of them had seen a group of 4 or 5 UFOs, and sentients with large eyes, long black hair, wearing shiny black one-piece suits had made themselves known to the children. The ships had then departed, and the witnesses to this encounter are a group of school children at the aerial school in a town called Ruwa, not far from the capital of Harare. The date is 16th September 1994. Cynthia Hind, Southern Africa's most well-known ufologist, had a few words to say, but the children stole her show with their innocent and honest faces. They had all drawn crayon pictures of the craft. The pictures were all the same. This I saw with my own eyes, and we had Dr. John Mack on the same show. What is he doing in Africa, by the way? But the star of the show was the South African Sangome wise man, Credo Mutwa, and he is well known for his disturbingly correct prophecies. One of these prophecies was the prediction of Hendrik Verwoerd's assassination. Credo Mutwa stormed the program with figurines of aliens looking exactly like the various races that we suspect to co-inhabit our planet with us. Now, these figurines that Credo Mutwa showed them have long been in the possession of the African nations, and he attested to the fact that the African nations coexisted with aliens in Africa for hundreds, if not thousands of years. He also made the disturbing allegation that the Europeans who first colonized Africa were mistaken for these other star people. Credo Mutwa has also said that AIDS can be cured by a sonic scan or audio frequency scan of some kind, and this does not harm the person, only the virus. Surely this is worth investigating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this into the chat here. This is the site that I'm reading from here, and there are photographs and of here that the children, from the children on this site. And now, this was this scientific study here, very fascinating. You know, I feel that this is a big leap here for these scientists to actually start talking about extraterrestrials and the existence of them, and also the spiritual aspect of how significant and important it is. They're serving a purpose. You know, when scientists sit down and start talking about these things, I think there are some people who will only then listen, because someone else like myself or anybody else that talk about ETs and visitations and other planets and the existence of life throughout the whole of the cosmic realm, eyebrows are raised, a bit of eyebrows are raised, and that kind of thing. So, now I'm back to the alien mind. What do we know about interactions between hyper-advanced aliens? Because over time, this person who's writing this has witnessed some of their intercommunications and critiques of one another. Now, I think we're beginning to understand that there are more ETs out there than we first imagined. I remember meeting Bob Dean years ago, and he was talking about at least 12 to 13 different types of ETs. 12 to 13 only. You know, Now, I don't know. I think through what I'm reading here, it's like there's so many types of ETs. After all, we're speaking of infinity here, universe after universe after universe. So, the tone and the character of such communications is often subtle. It's framed in terms of a greater scale of alternate cycle gravitic resonance. And again, listen, pay attention, because this is all about communicating, ETs communicating through gravitic resonance or sound frequency, thought frequencies. Fine, they're often fine and sometimes elusive, but mostly transparent details are embedded in a slightly deeper realm of hyperspace. This is a realm of communication that is, I guess it's pretty out there, esoteric. It's like thinking of this is quite beyond our comprehension, but I think we have to stretch our minds a bit here, and let's not get caught in tunnel vision or tunnel beliefs or beliefs of, the black and white. This is how it is and that's it, period. Now, ET science is more complex and is premised on a better basic understanding of the universe. It's as though they begin from a greater variety of understandings, and there you go. Oh, see? A greater variety of understanding across a variety of different horizons, so to speak. And for centuries, humanity has been duped and funneled into certain beliefs that are lies, basically. Nonviolence among hyperversals appears to be the understood rule, although political and cultural disagreements definitely do occur. But in some such cases, each side may try to assert a larger, more enduring premise for his or her actions. Nevertheless, in a case like that of a verdant IFSP intervention here on Earth, dissenting or counterposed hyperversals, or in some cases, categorically more advanced hyperversals, do feel free to assert that humans need to know basic details about these verdants. And if you've been listening to me reading over these weeks, this alien mind, you know that the verdants have an agenda and they're colonizers, okay? Who's behind the mess that the elite is, manipulating here? Well, I've often said there's got to be somebody behind the elites, the cabal. I don't think they have the capacity. Okay, so somebody's manipulating, and somebody got a hold of them, and I said last time, they sold their soul to the devil in the guise of the verdants. But also then you've got other manipulators and other ones who want to be in control. I'm talking about numerous ETs, and then there are others who are highly spiritual ETs, who are more advanced on that level. Should you appeal to hyperversals about such, be sure that you embody a higher standard. Some hyperversals offer complex yet easily understood critiques of verdant excess and verdant use of manipulated violence. Okay, pay attention, because these verdants are using manipulated violence. Okay, that it's framed to seem indirect. I want to note this, because violence that's framed to seem indirect, so say it's like out of the blue, okay? Like some person does something so violent that it's framed to seem that it's indirect, or something that comes out of the blue, that it has no context, that it has no connection. But this is what's happening around us. We see strangest behavior of our fellow brothers and sisters. Acceleration in strange, awful types of behavior. And you say, well, what is it? How could this person do this? What is wrong with this person? These are our responses, right? So pay attention to this, because the verdants are using manipulated violence. Okay? And just take a look. I've said this before. When you see these mugshots of people who have committed heinous crimes, horrible things, look at their eyes are vacant. Nobody's home. Complex statements about human feelings and a human kind of existential predicament are offered. Sometimes a hyperversal will make a statement verbal, graphic, and deep with subtle details about a typical human's daily work or social predicaments, essentially showing that hyperversals have some of the same feelings, but this is done deliberately. When humans discuss a topic, we often reference a variety of national and cultural viewpoints. Hyperversals communicate in ways that suggest a vastly larger awareness. For example, in one case, mention was made about the Markarian chain of galaxies that curl out from the center of the Virgo supercluster. The best human representation is just a photo. Okay, that's all we have. Just a photo, but the hyperversal representation was much deeper and was detailed in ways that I could only begin to appreciate. It showed a number of different integrated aspects of large elliptical galaxies that involved mergers of entire galaxies, and some of them were ongoing. Imagine seeing a telepathic map of the politics, dynamics, and culture of Europe, for example. Now, imagine this, seeing a telepathic map. Okay, telepathic map. If you had never seen such a thing, what would it be like? Many of the details would be there, yet you wouldn't have enough background information to absorb it all. In other words, mitigating an outward vulgarity in hyperversal disagreements are the fantastically complex, multicultural, historical, and scientific understandings that hyperversals share, even if they aren't always part of the same universal bailiwick. Some hyperversals are keenly aware of legal implications in daily events, which suggest that they too are bounded by basic legal considerations. But what's the basis for such legal distinctions? Is it formalized, or is it simply about what all societies share in common? It's possible that among hyperversals, ETs, law takes on a unified character, meaning it's merged or finely integrated values for scientific, ecological, and even crime-specific considerations. But what does that mean? An earlier chapter describes a topological structure of mind and language. Legal definitions based on the topology of alternate cycle commonality can be more precise than is concretized, singular word form, which can be propped up for deceptive misuses. This is about legal definitions that are fractionally interlinked so that you can see them all at the same time, then they are easier to comprehend. Okay. So among hyperversals and other aliens, unified values and definitions help to integrate entire categories of meaning in order to make sense of our universe. This does allow for a greater back and forth conversation between more ideas so that they can agree on intermediate values more effectively. When hyperversals aliens communicate, they do so with multiple implications. We can easily imagine a universal code against murder, violence, and destruction, yet we can also see that a population like Verdance may try to shrug off some universal standards by arguing in favor of Verdant authority in a physical location. This would be a departure that can degrade into petty, if not infantile, ideas about the universe. For example, what rules apply when one galaxy overuses negative cycle energy and speeds the universal clock? Okay. There's a universal clock. I've talked about this before in this reading. And, many of us have talked about, time seems to be speeding up, So is this the overuse of negative cycle energy? That's why time is speeding up in our universal clock. This is depleting the universal resources, and shortening the duration of surrounding galaxies. Such a problem may have arisen when a hyperversal said that a 3 ellipticals hyperversal responded to a disturbance to his large elliptical galaxy, which caused him to leave his retirement garden to attend to the matter. And on the other hand, it more likely meant he'd retired after the Centaurus A merger crisis, but was sent in our direction instead. The problem may have been verdant overuse of negative cycle energy. Meanwhile, we've seen corrupt, controlling tendencies among 3 ellipticals, hyperversals, more about that later. A counterposed or competing hyperversal said that from the perspective of more refined societies, the 3 ellipticals verdant combination may seem like an alien hell. With a large galaxy like Centaurus A merges with a spiral galaxy, there are likely trillions of refugees who must flee radiation danger zones and find available planets to live on. Under such circumstances, all populations in merging galaxies and in some surrounding galaxies must limit their population growth because, on a predictable epic scale, galaxies merge regularly. In Virgo, for instance, our next-door galaxy supercluster, galaxies are merging right now, and many more formed Virgo's numerous large elliptical galaxies. All large galaxies are the product of mergers. In other words, the only way to safely and peacefully maintain order in the universe is for surrounding galaxies to accommodate at least some refugees of galaxy mergers. In other words, the only way, I'm going to read that again, to safely maintain order in the universe is for surrounding galaxies to accommodate at least some of the refugees of galaxy mergers. Merging galaxies must agree on emergency contingencies, and all merging populations must try to reduce their numbers in order to be able to better transport to new locations, or in some cases share planets if they agree to do so. It's an inescapable part of life in this universe. So what are they telling us here? They're talking about merging galaxies, which are happening at this moment. Okay. And what happens when galaxies merge? That there are refugees, trillions of refugees who have to flee radiation danger zones. So they're looking for available planets to live on. So then our next door neighbor, for instance, in Virgo, the galaxy supercluster there, they're merging right now. So what they're saying is this is an inescapable part of life in this universe, and we're part of the universe. There's no way around it. Meanwhile, in M83, a galaxy right next to Centaurus A, the verdants apparently ignored the plight of their Centaurus A neighbors. Rather than limit their population numbers to an understandable 50 trillion or so, given their security environment, the verdants went hog wild and actually grew their population many times larger than what is safe and sustainable. Aren't we dealing with overpopulation, they say? Now listen, I'm only saying what I'm hearing. I'm only giving this information out. They say overpopulation numbers, okay, for our well-being and sustainability, for the security of this environment, okay. Now, just when Centaurus A aliens needed help and cooperation during the last 200 million years of their galaxy merger, guess what? The verdants defied universal norms and they grew to 500 trillion aliens. That simple, unadored fact tells us something is drastically structurally wrong in verdant society. Their population numbers leapt out on first inspection and suggest that nearly all aliens in surrounding galaxies would be wary of a verdant incursion. Other populations are expected to respect the universal equivalency between populations in order to preserve resources and provide a check on population problem cases. Yet verdants ignore this universal equivalency. Hey, there's a universal equivalency out there. For us, that is a warning signal, meaning for us, us here, us humans. That is a warning signal. So we need to examine the verdant gray aggregation carefully. Now, gray meaning the grays. As you might remember, the verdants pretty much own and rule the grays, destroyed their planet. So we need to examine this, the verdant gray aggregation, carefully at a safe distance rather than naively allow them bases in our star system. Obviously, aliens in the 50 to 100 galaxies near M83 will be similarly wary. It's a matter of simple common sense. And Philip Kraft now reports that he was dropped from the verdant diplomatic approach and was replaced by a younger person. Verdants gave Kraft the cold shoulder after he asked questions and published details that Verdants might consider embarrassing, meaning he wrote that a Verdant lied about Verdant use of advanced energy weapons. Such developments underscore the need to be wary of an aggressive, self-described alien colonizer. And again, the colonizing mind of these Verdants have really infiltrated upon Earth into the minds of some of the elite, the cabal, as we know them to be. When a population grows so large and acquisitive, it tends to ignore the pleas of other aliens. A regime of 500 trillion energy-demanding aliens doesn't really think in the human sense of carefully balanced planning and analysis. Instead, it tends to lurch out in search of what it wants or what it needs without considering others' rights. And in that sense, the verdant population is an essentially faceless, unresponsive aggregate. Now, we've seen verdants who are sullen, presumptuous, and even deceptive, which is to be expected, given what we know about their empire. And when they're cited for violating the intergalactic ecology, verdants offer a variety of tacky excuses. For example, they pose the IFSP's various conscript planets as a kind of window dressing to cover for the verdant population explosion. Now remember I said the words intergalactic ecology, and they are cited for violating the intergalactic ecology. I mean, okay, we have our issues here on this part of this Mother Earth and part of the galaxy with ecology. There's intergalactic ecology. So they're working with this out here, intergalactic ecology and the violating the rules. And so we can't even keep it straight here. I'm just saying, well, we're trying, but cases of the sort underscore the need for larger conventions and carefully metered constraints on any population. Now, our Milky Way Andromeda galaxy group wraps into the larger Virgo supercluster and is being pulled by the Canes 1 galaxy group, which blends directly into Virgo. Meanwhile, the Verdant's more distant Centaurus A galaxy group is moving away from us, so our community is here around us, not way over there in Centaurus A. It's most ironic that Verdants and old Centaurus A aliens are here, trying to mob up our situation and convince us that all we need to think about is their wants and their needs. Compared to aliens in our galaxy group, Verdants took far too much, and that's their recurring problem, not ours. The first and foremost mind and energy resonance space for us is the community around us. It's essentially a vast orb-like configuration that resonates into nearby galaxies, not Centaurus A though, and across Virgo. It's a much more intelligent configuration. Rather than allow ourselves to be drawn into Verdant's distant greedy debacle, we need to orient ourselves, our closer, more moderate or modest neighbors. Our planet will be safer and better, in other words. But first, we need to block Verdants out in order to concentrate on neighbors and neighboring galaxies. Within 10 to 20 light years of our sun, we may find a small planet with physiological, smaller, gentler native aliens who developed a shared social identity early. And within 30 light years, we can expect to find a variety of sharing and even peaceful societies. In some alien bureaucracies, we can expect to see a wide range of physiological and psychological conditions relating to age, inflexibility of government routines, and desensitization due to having worked with relatively backward regimes like our own for long periods of time. Since aliens have been engineered to live longer than us, than humans, the subject is of prime importance. After years of communicating and interacting with aliens, I've noticed that some older aliens tend to forget basic lessons of their earlier education. They tend to discard the cautions and reservations taught to them during their university years, and they rely instead on their personal insights. Although alien medicine is more advanced than ours, in some cases alien psychology hasn't kept pace with alien medical technology. And as a result, we see long-lived aliens, the so-called Verdants, described by Philip Kraft. They live many times longer than humans, but these aliens who are physiologically intact yet very degraded emotionally. One hyperversal hinted that some hyperversals live 11 million years, believe it or not, which is 550 times longer than Verdants and 139,240 times longer than humans. Kraft was told that Verdants live for 20,000 years, which is 224 times longer than us, humans. In old aliens, a kind of psychic deadening can occur, an emotional desiccation that can lead to some of the symptoms of senility among active working aliens, rigidity, reluctance to learn new ideas, and strangely mechanical routines repeated over and over again. Worse yet, such aliens regard themselves as relatively young compared to older working peers, and they may offhandedly dismiss the suggestion that some of their best sensitivities have, kind of withered over time. They may not be aware that they've changed. Imagine how it would be to live for thousands of years and to have tended to wars and sabotage on a place like Earth, to have orchestrated campaigns of brutal destruction, or worse yet, the ruin of an entire planet. Emotional sensitivities that wither aren't easily regained, and brain connections die as a result. Although humans get old and we die within several decades of brutal wrongdoing, Verdants don't. They live on for thousands of years. The science that gives them prolonged life can't resuscitate vital sensitivities, though, which are a critical dimension of basic functional intelligence. As a result, Verdants responsible for too many abuses are like walking dead. They don't feel for their victims, and sensitivities of the sort will have died hundreds if not thousands of years earlier. Now, for humans, that can be a major problem. When ranking figures in an off-world regime like that of Verdants become too callous, younger Verdants may not be able to overcome their elders' rigid consensus, and the result can be a deeply seated bias, a misreading of highly dynamic events here on Earth, for instance. And in the end, due to structural inertia, older offending elements may succeed in painting all human affairs solely in terms of the Verdant agenda. Outranked, younger Verdants who might otherwise object to abductions and conflict propagation refrain from expressing themselves for fear of career consequences. Wow. As happened to the gray planet, the results can be catastrophic. Verdants reply that although their intervention may have ruined the Greys' planet, Greys are now less dangerous non-sexuals who serve others rather than themselves. The question is whether they were tricked into serving Verdance, and whether the death of the gray planet, which was then an IFSP breeding and use of gray survivors, is a kind of pyramid scheme that depletes the universal ecology more than would have happened had the gray planet survived. The three ellipticals hyperversal faction comments on the subject at intervals. They suggest that had the grays not been so desperate, grays might not have decided to become non-sexual. This is an important question because if IFSP operatives steer human conflicts toward the brink, as happened to the grays, the IFSP will occupy the area and use human refugees. Now, what court hears such cases as these? Is it all but a soap opera for doddering, insensitive hyperversals tired of haggling with aggressive sexuals? The only court of binding relevance is the press and the media of a target people before their planet has been trashed, not afterwards. Okay. That's interesting. After losing their home planet prematurely, the Greys, survivors pose no challenge to the IFSP unless they tell their story elsewhere. Now, aliens may look at such cases from a variety of perspectives, but if their own inner animal is allowed to reign over higher faculties, such planet trashing can be seen or seeded the universe with showcase non-sexuals. So this is a very interesting term. Their own inner animal, would be allowed to reign over higher faculties. Therefore allowing such planet trashing. The death of a planet like Earth could simply be dismissed as a lower ordered debacle with primitive museum-like qualities, while hyperversals live on in technological splendor. There are some in the anonymous hyperversal mainstream who, due to age-related rigidity and indifference, may think that all primitive aliens are what they are because they are failed spirits trapped by low-order impulses, as if a godlike order of being places them here or there accordingly. Humans would like to think that hyperversal aliens wouldn't be so unscientific, yet in the aged resonance of hyperversal groupthink, a variety of unspoken assumptions can distort reasoning about newly evolved aliens. Is there gender among hyperversal aliens? Apparently there is, but among non-sexual populations, the distinction isn't as graphic as it is for humans. I've listened to some hyperversals who seem to know the feelings and impulses of sexuals from a subjective perspective, so it's reasonable to assume that some hyperversals either prefer to be sexual or choose a mixed sexual/non-sexual strategy in order to retain genetic diversity and hardiness. Hyper-advanced science can go in a variety of directions. It can verge on seemingly unfathomable new categories and then assume a different kind of character. For a more earthly analogy, consider the following. When humans become honest enough to observe and to respect the intricate logic hyperversals both see and feel into a greater spectrum of resonance with nature in the whole of the universe. There may already be a more advanced order of being that they too must observe and respect in order to better themselves. Among hyperversal aliens, the notion of species might stretch the human idea of possibilities. One hyperversal says that hyperversals tend to be non-sexual. If this is true, would it be encouraging? Imagine what the universe would be like over time if they were all sexuals. I assume, as appears to be the case, that at present, hyperversal aliens may be more modest in number than more recently evolved populations, yet hyperversals are far more capable. The problem with estimating hyperversal population numbers is that our notion of time is definitely not the limit elsewhere. Even though we humans are beginning to understand the nature of time and hyperspace, overall there may be more hyperversals than recently evolved aliens. Okay, when hyperversals can both see and ascertain that you understand their terms of existence, the basic universal assumptions of their lives, they are more sympathetic then, especially if you live by similar standards. And this is outlined in, to be noticeable here, they go out of their way to emphasize that the entire universe continuously strives to return to or integrate as a unified collective entity, its true basis, which is sometimes distorted by pretension and by misconcept. Some hyperversals have nurtured and helped humans develop a larger understanding that we can never sufficiently express gratitude for, although we begin by humbly spreading universal standards. As a result of some hyperversal aliens' efforts to tandem with those of other neighboring aliens, we now have a preliminary critique of Verdants, the colonizers, and over time we'll probably refine our critique to acknowledge that even though we may not agree to be part of the IFSP, some of its efforts will, in the end, have helped humanity to evolve. So, I'm going to leave off here, and I'm finding this very interesting. I hope you are too, and see where we go next week. There's a lot of more very in-depth information on this coming up in this book, and I'll continue with this next Friday. And meanwhile, have a beautiful week, and I will see you next Friday, and all be well. Thank you. Thank you, Colleen.